So this afternoon, I'm going to be speaking with you all about youth unemployment in Virginia and the unique economic obstacles that young people face in today's climate in 2015. Now, first off, why is this important? Why does this matter to us? Now, a lot of this presentation is about jobs and unemployment and sort of more metrics-based things, but at the core of it, a job is a lot more than just a statistic. A job provides stability, a job provides purpose, a job provides dignity, and a job provides a sense of stability and security for an individual, their family, their parents if they're young, their children or their spouse if they're older. A job is so much more than just an income or a number. So that's really what this is about and why it matters.
Ryan, can you hit
Oh,
allow?
yeah. Thank you. So, if we're looking at the scope of the problem in terms of, not only why does this matter, but what's the impact of it. Millennials are the largest generation in the U.S., and millennials, which is a phrase I use a lot, is defined as the group of people between the ages of 18 and 34 in America today. They comprise approximately 1/3 of the U.S. population. And nationally, more than 5.6 million of those Americans are neither in school nor working, which leads them to be called the disconnected youth because they're not really connected to any sort of formal institution. The unemployment rate for Americans, this is a slightly narrower age range, but for Americans 16 to 24, stands at nearly 15%, which is more than double the overall adult unemployment rate. I should specify that by saying that obviously a lot of those people might be in school, so that's the unemployment rate for Americans in that age range that are actually looking for work. In Virginia specifically, 8.4% of adults between 18 and 34 who are looking for work are unemployed, which is about 2.4 times the unemployment rate for all adults in Virginia. To give you a sense of also the cost of the problem, why it's an issue that public policymakers should deal with, on average, one unemployed 18 to 24-year-old will cost his or her federal or state government about $4,100 or more annually in foregone tax revenue that the government will not get, as well as safety net benefits that the government will pay out to this person, which amounts to about $8.9 billion a year for the entire government across the country, paid for by all of us. So it's a cost that everyone of all ages bears and everyone should be concerned about. Young people who also experience early unemployment in their careers bear a 10 to 15% wage scar, which means that for about 20 years of their career, their earnings will be less than those who are employed earlier in their career. And this is a problem as well because if you look at the domino effect, people who have these wage scars are going to delay sort of key life decisions that we know contribute to the economy and to the growth of our country, such as buying a house, possibly getting married, having children. All these decisions are going to be delayed if you experience early unemployment in your youth. Now, who it affects? Now, obviously, you could say everyone. I just said that everyone who's an American, bears the cost of this. But if we narrow it down a little bit more, we have a lot of different categories of young people who are primarily affected by this. Young people who are employed in a high-quality job, even though in some ways they aren't primarily affected because they are employed in a job. And when I say high quality, I mean high quality in the sense that it involves a certain level of skill that you're trained for. It involves benefits such as health insurance and vacation and some sort of leave and a high quality of life in that job. Unemployed young people obviously are hugely affected by it, as are underemployed young people and young people who are employed in a low quality job. So they may be working full time, but they may not have benefits, they may not have any sort of opportunity to use skills that they have learned. Employers obviously are hugely impacted by this, as are parents of these young people. The average citizens, of course, who bear these costs. Institutions of higher ed, since they're going to be the ones, as I'll talk about later, who are primarily training a lot of young people and giving them skills and degrees. The federal government is a huge stakeholder in this since they are the holders of a lot of student loans, which I'll talk on as well. And then healthcare providers. Healthcare providers have a huge stake in this since young people traditionally are more likely to not be covered than older people. And for a healthcare provider, it's going to be a net positive if you're trying to increase young employments that you can provide more young people with health insurance and that you're not bearing the costs of young people without insurance. So when we talk about what exactly is causing the problem, there are a lot of different causes that could be their own presentation in itself. But one of the unique causes, or issues I should say, more than a cause, that I'll focus on today a little bit, is sort of the vicious cycle of our education system today. Millennials are the most educated generation in U.S. history, with about 61% of adult millennials having attended college. However, these people who are graduating from college oftentimes are not finding employment. And why is that? Well, over the next 5 years, 55 million jobs will become available, but they require some sort of technical or skills training post-high school. Now, as you can also see here, which I'll sort of expand on, but between 2000 and 2005, the number of career and technical education, or CTE credits, taken nationally declined by more than half. And instead, young people have opted for traditional four-year liberal arts colleges that give them degrees that not necessarily prepare them for the jobs that are open today. So you have a lot of young people who have degrees, as you can see, 61% have attended college, but they can't use those degrees to get the jobs that are open right now. So instead they have this sort of skills gap. It's a confounded problem because, as I'll go into later as well, they have these degrees, they can't necessarily find the work, and then with that degree comes a level of debt. Student debt for the average millennial is about $30,000 from undergrad alone. Now, this is obviously an issue that is not new to our country or Virginia, and a lot of different previous policies have been implemented to address this. I'll touch on a few of them. AmeriCorps is probably the best known of these policies, which has been around for 21 years. And it's been highly effective. It's been shown to increase employment prospects by 27%, and increase those by 51% for those without a high school degree. Also at the congressional level, the Workforce Investment Acts have funded youth opportunity grants, which were funding grants towards localities and local grant recipients. And that program placed more than 46,000 young people directly in jobs and provided additional skills training to more than 23,000. Of course, as great ideas go that seem to work, Congress did not continue to fund it. So it's been inactive for about 10 years. Funded at the federal level through the Department of Labor is the Registered Apprenticeship Program, which is a program that's administered both in the federal level as well as the state level, and provides some sort of employer-based skills training to young people. And this generates $50 in revenue for every federal dollar invested, which is a 5,000% return on investment for the federal government. Most recently, we also had the 2014 Workforce Investment Act reauthorization, which stipulated that 75% of federal funds that go to state employment programs be directed specifically to helping disconnected youth get skills and obtain jobs. So it's certainly something that policymakers have been looking at, but we need a more targeted approach. So in terms of the criteria that I'm using to sort of evaluate these different alternatives, high quality jobs is definitely one of them, as I mentioned. Those are jobs that involve a level of skill, have some sort of benefits, and have a strong support of being full-time and that sort of thing. Quality of life is key. You might have a job but have a very low quality of life in the sense that you're not insured, you don't have stable housing, you can't save money for non-work expenses, that sort of thing. Skill level of workers is definitely key too, because as I mentioned, we have a lot of young people who might be employed, but they're employed in a field where they're not using the skill they earned a degree in, or they don't have a job that allows them to get fulfillment through any use of skills. And then lastly, stability, opportunity, and equity are all hugely important. Stability important, obviously, because if a young person is sort of floating from job to job, that's no way for them to save money, plant down roots, and have some sort of planning for the future. Opportunity is key, which I'll expand on a little bit later as well, but as a few of us have mentioned a little bit, sort of hearing a talk last night at the first tech mentoring program graduation, and Dr. Billy Canaday from UVA talked about how a lot of people who are adults today speak to their children and say, and cannot say really, that this is going to be a generation that's going to be able to have more opportunity than their parents did. And these problems are at the heart of this. So opportunity is a huge problem for young people today. And equity is huge as well. Specifically with equity, we find that there's a lot of layers of unemployment gaps between young people based by demographics and population. And one of the biggest ones is by race, that we see a lot of discrepancies between the unemployment rate for white young people versus Latino or Black or Asian young people, depending on the area of the country and that sort of thing. But that is a huge component of addressing youth unemployment. So in terms of the alternatives, the alternate approaches that I focused on, the first is expanded apprenticeship programs through the Registered Apprenticeship Program, increased service and volunteer programs such as AmeriCorps, large-scale public sector hiring. A lot of policymakers have been looking at this issue over the past few years and said that really the solution is just to implement something like we had in the New Deal, where the government just hires lots of young people, gives them skills, and then sends them off on their way. Debt forgiveness for employment in high-need industries. We see a lot of targeted approaches for this, such as teaching or other industries or professions that might want to attract people. And then in return, you get your student loan debt forgiven. And lastly, investment in entrepreneurship programs for young people. That one of the other sort of nuanced issues in sort of youth unemployment is that we see the millennial generation is about half of young people have interest in starting a business on their own, but the number of young people that have started a business has dropped by about 12% in the past 15 years, which is of concern to the larger economy because traditionally most job creation comes from new businesses, startups, small businesses, that sort of thing. And young people are not able to start businesses at the rate they used to be because of student debt and a lot of these issues. So that is certainly a cause for concern as well. So what I propose in this presentation is really to take an experimental and a control group and run them through the selected alternative, which I'll explain as well, and really to track the change in their employment prospects, benefits, all that sort of thing, using a lot of different data sets before, during, and after their participation in this program. And in terms of the data that we would need to collect, or the state would need to collect rather, it includes a lot, but wage and salary, frequency of employment, employment status, the number of hours worked each week, the amount of specialized skills used, health insurance status, amount of debt, and the amount of money that someone can save beyond their just their paycheck. So here just to sort of look as well at the criteria alternative matrix. You can see the policy that best satisfies the criteria that I've selected is increased investment in apprenticeships at the state level, which I'll just explain what that is a little more. So as I mentioned, it's federally, the Registered Apprenticeship, or RA program, is administered federally through the Department of Labor. And in Virginia, it's administered through the Department of Labor and Industry. And it works pretty simply. Any employer in Virginia can sign up as an RA sponsor, and once they sign up, employees can then sign up to gain skills by taking classes either through their employer or through a local community college or some hybrid of the two. Over the course of their training, which on average lasts about 4 years, they will gain skills in over 40 industries. The curriculum that they learn is tied to industry needs and driven by what the employer is looking for. And the employers also sign up for this program at no cost to themselves. Most of the cost for the program comes from providing the people who are actually going to be teaching this, and it's not taught in-house, as well as sort of administrative costs for the program as well. Once an apprentice is finished with the RA program, they earn nationally recognized certification and industry credentials, which they can then use to either move up in their employer, in their profession, in their field, or to hopefully, if that's what they want, to switch to another field and just have stronger employment prospects elsewhere. And to sort of close out. So just a few other statistics to sort of point out why this is something that matters and why it's something that Virginia should be investing in. Over the next 10 years in Virginia, about 1,500,000 new jobs will become available, either through job creation or retirement. and as many as 60% of those jobs require no post-secondary degree at all, only a high school degree and some industry certification. So we see this program as being a great way to employ young people in a long-term basis, because if you have a lot of people that don't want to take on the cost and the debt potentially of higher education, the Registered Apprenticeship Program is a great way for employers to be able to offer exactly those skills and industry certifications that young people will need to satisfy the requirements for hundreds of thousands of jobs in the Commonwealth for the next few years. This is something that Virginia is already investing in their most recent 2015 budget that was passed. Over almost $1 million was invested in the RA program. There's certainly room for more, which is what I'm advocating for here. And there are positive signs. $100,000 in the budget was invested to develop a Governor's Academy for Student Apprenticeships and Trades at Thomas Nelson Community College. So you can see that the public sector and the education community are coming around to this issue to provide ways other than higher ed to provide skills and industry certifications to young people that hopefully ultimately will increase their employability and their quality of life. So that is all. I'll take some questions.
Have you seen this registered apprentice program model in other states or other countries? Or?
Other countries, I'm not sure, but other states, yes. I mean, because since it is a federal program more than anything else, most states, I hesitate to say every state, but most states do have the Registered Apprenticeship Program and use some sort of iteration of it. Or to the federal government and available to anyone across the country, if not through the state. Mm-hmm.
It's probably more comment than anything else. One, I think this is an issue that I've been worried about, because I feel like we're going to lose at a minimum half a generation. With the fact that you have incredibly smart, qualified people that graduate from college, and what they're doing is they're going to graduate school because they can't find a job. That's different. I'm picking on Mike and Sherry, because we graduated college at about the same time, and it was different. You could literally you graduated, and if you busted your tail, you could get a job, right? Within 6 months.
We're not really. I probably came out at roughly the same time as you. Yeah.
Yeah. And whereas now you could, you walk out in your honors, be lucky to find one. Unless it's engineering or something like that. So you could graduate with anything. If you've done internships, some company would take a chance on you. If you work hard, you were all right. So I don't know if government's the answer to solving the problem, but I definitely think it's something that we have to look at, because it's going to have ramifications on the tax rolls, Social Security, Medicare. Y'all start getting some jobs. I'm not going to have I'm not going to have no money to I'm not going to have Medicare. So I need y'all to work.
No, it's true. Like you said, it speaks to your presentation exactly that you have this tsunami of people that are about to go on Medicare, Social Security, and the risk potentially of people not being there to provide the tax base for it. And so it's a huge problem, and it is, like you said, a cultural problem too. It's not just a public policy problem, but it's an issue of people needing to look at, is higher ed the right option? And it's not for everyone, and it is for many.
Talk about that a little bit, and we were having a conversation about that in one of the sessions earlier. How there's prestige placed with getting a college education, and it's simply not there. It's kind of like the difference between home ownership and renting. You're supposed to own a home. You're not supposed to rent. You're supposed to go to college. So how do you deal with the fact that if you put someone into an apprenticeship program, how do you make them feel like they've been successful despite not going to college?
Make it highly competitive, sorry to answer or butt in, but the Naval Apprenticeship Program, that's a really sought after apprenticeship, and once you're in, you're kind of good. So I would make it very competitive and offer different fields. It wouldn't be like a quote unquote job corps where everybody was accepted, but yeah.
I think also to add to that is that there needs to be other alternatives. A 4-year program is maybe not necessarily for everyone.
So I think, something like this is absolutely useful. And to also add, some of you know that AmeriCorps, that's what I do. I'm an AmeriCorps program officer. And so it's interesting to hear you talk about that program. You probably also saw earlier this year that Virginia became the first employer of national service, something that came from our federal funder. So do you think programs like that also help with this issue, to be able to have those different types of avenues to finding employment for millennials?
I do. So, to first answer your question, I definitely do. I think statistically, just in my research, it's been shown to be one of the most effective programs to increase employability and ensure that young people have a track to a job, because they provide the basis for skills and the ability to then move from AmeriCorps or some other kind of service program into a more permanent job. It's proven to be incredibly successful, and I think, personally, I think it's a great program as well. I think, to sort of speak to Casey's point, that AmeriCorps does have a certain amount of prestige around it and respect around it, which I think is a great thing. And to speak, Dr. Eckert, to your other question earlier that everyone was saying, that I think there does need to be a cultural shift also in apprenticeships and programs like that. And I think part of that is the fact that I mentioned there's more than 40 industries that offer apprenticeships in Virginia right now, but one of the problems that the state is grappling with is that a lot of industries that seem more exciting or might have more prestige don't currently offer apprenticeships. So a lot of your technology industries or healthcare industries or industries that might seem more quote-unquote important or attractive to young people don't offer apprenticeship programs. So that's something the state is trying to figure out to do is, how do we encourage employers and incentivize employers to invest in a different kind of training program that might target a different population than just cherry-picking the best people out of a four-year institution.
And then for the educational system, how do you make sure that you get the right students going to the right apprentice program?
Mm-hmm.
But isn't the reason those particular types of employers are underrepresented in having internships is because they just don't have to? They're getting the recruits they need because those have, there's a need, there's a demand for the workers, and they've got plenty of applicants. They probably would like more, so they would have choice, but why spend the money when basically the individuals are incurring all that cost on themselves? Why would the business want to start incurring the cost for them?
It's true. I mean, in a very honest
Unless
sense, they
they're
don't.
Starbucks, they're starting to do that maybe.
Yeah.
They're giving college to their employees because they think that there's an equitable answer to a problem there. But if I'm only concerned with return on investment, it's not a good option.
Exactly. And I think that's one of the, sort of speaking into the more cultural issue, is that the state can invest all at once in expanding the program and incentivizing employers in more manufacturing or trade-based industries to do it. But until you make a sort of apprenticeship or trade program seem important from a value standpoint or an equity standpoint for those kind of companies that don't have a financial incentive or a financial reason to do it, then there's always going to be a stopping point for it.
I have a response to Adam's question about the prestige and then a question for you, Ryan. So I think marketing is going to be a huge tool. I have a lot of friends who are graduating this weekend, and most of them went straight into graduate school or law school after undergrad, and they all told me, I'm 24, 25, 26, I have no work experience. Now I have thousands upon thousands of dollars in debt, and I really wish that I had waited to go to grad school. And then kind of the group of us back here who are millennials who did, with the exception of Becky, who did take some time off before going back to school, I think, at least I personally have so much more of a value brought to school. Because if I had gone straight in this program after undergrad, I probably would be really quiet and really have nothing to say because I have no state government experience. So in your research, did you find any groups that may have said, okay, so many of us are going straight into postgraduate studies, but we might have regretted that decision or wish that we had waited more so you're going to get some work experience? That's kind of like a different topic, but I don't know, or if you feel that way too, because you did as well.
Yeah, well, on the first point, I definitely agree that I think, personally, I agree that working first has made this program better for me, and on the same reasons you said. And anecdotally, I think in a lot of the research that I found, you do find that or I did find that a lot of people that have been interviewed in articles and reports about this have said that they, if they graduated undergrad in sort of the depths of the financial crisis in 08, 09, 10, 11 maybe, that they thought that additional degrees were the best option for them. And maybe they were, but maybe they weren't, especially if they were in an industry such as law that really got hit hard and left them even further in debt, and then they aren't using that degree and the skills they earned in that degree in their chosen profession. And maybe they found another job somewhere else that still provides, a quality of life and a decent living, but it still left them saddled with debt that they might not have chosen to do if they knew those pathways to a career wouldn't have been there. So yes.
All right, thank you.